Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Thank you, Melissa. That was so beautiful. So she looked at going. All right, guys, let's go ahead and welcome Mary and Kevin Lathrops. You guys, I'm coming around with actual, what do you call these things? Things. What's called the whiteboards? If you want one. I'm taking notes.
They know it all already. I've got a photograph.
That's for the that's for the newly married.
You guys have to that.
Okay. I guess.
Good evening.
Only 8 years ago.
I'm taking notes, y'all. Let me tell you, I'm taking notes.
don't do that either.
Take your own notes, not for your wife. Got great notes for you.
He doesn't want to get
I
married.
would have done that.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're so much further along.
been there, done that.
So, yeah, thank you. Juliana, you brought your own.
Okay, good evening, everybody.
Evening.
For those that don't know us, I'm
Sure, why
Kevin.
not?
Kevin?
Thank you.
Kevin, and this is Mary, my wife Mary. Lathrops. And our story is a little bit different than the last two. We look like we should have been married for 40 or 50 years. But we've been married 10. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary. So, in order for you to understand us, we need to tell you a little bit about our previous marriage and the things that we learned from that and how God met us in that marriage, and then we can talk about our story. Okay? So I'm going to start with mine, and for the sake of time, I'm going to keep it as brief as I can, but there's some highlights, some high points, and maybe some low points that you need to know about. So Natalie asked us for important verses, or life verses, and Mary's is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight.
Good one, Mary.
So, yeah, it's a great verse. And then mine is Philippians 4, 8 and 9. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellent and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. And I especially like the word dwell in that scripture. That's where we need to live.
You
Yes.
repeat the verse?
That is Philippians 4, verses 8 and 9. So, when I was 22, I got married. And I married a lady that is right in the middle of that picture. Her name was Carol. So I went from Carrie to Mary.
And you used to call me Carrie too. She's a wonderful woman.
My wife and I were still in college. We lived in married housing for a year, which I would not recommend. That's how our married life started. And from there, we graduated, began our careers as teachers, and moved up to a little tiny community in northern Michigan. Learned all about below zero weather and lots of snow. But it was a good, we were there for 3 years. And then we were at a point where we were getting very settled. And it kind of made us nervous. You know, we were 25, and we were buying a house. We had a couple cars, and good jobs. But we didn't have kids yet, and we thought before we have kids, we want to have an adventure. So we sold our house, sold the cars, sold a bunch of our belongings, packed everything up. My wife's parents had a farm, and they had a building that we could put everything in, so we packed it all up in there and joined the Peace Corps. And spent 2 years in Nicaragua. I was a musician, so I had a job, believe it or not. I joined the Peace Corps, and I had to have a tux because I played in the National Symphony. So that was my job, playing the symphony and teaching in their conservatory. My wife was a special education teacher, so she taught special education teachers how to teach. We did that for 2 years. There was a revolution in the country at the time, so we had to make a rather hasty exit. But we did complete our 2-year term, And then from there, we came back to Michigan for a short period of time. And we loved Latin America, we loved speaking Spanish and the culture there. My wife was fluent in Spanish, and so we went back down, but not to Nicaragua, we went to Costa Rica, and we spent 6 years there teaching in an American school and having 3 kids. So the first, and that is the beginning of really the God part of this story. I guess it all is, but this is where I realized God was involved, because my wife had a couple miscarriages, and in 1980, in November, she was due to deliver and had a stillbirth, unfortunately. And just 2 days before the due date, and so a number of friends counseled us to spend time mourning, and we told them we are ready to have kids. And we had some good friends that had adopted, and they offered to put their phone number in the local paper, and so that, with a little ad that said, North American couple wishes to adopt a newborn, and they began calling them, and they got lots of phone calls.
Wow.
And because at that time there were a lot of Nicaraguans, because of the revolution, that had moved to Costa Rica and were working in, whatever job they could get, and they couldn't afford to have more kids. And that was the case for my oldest daughter. We found out a month after, in fact, we were able to pick her up a month after our baby died, and bring her home. So, and it was right before Christmas. So, that was really miraculous for us to see that.
I have to interrupt, because this is my favorite part of the story. Carrie had the stillborn, they dried up her milk, but she was able to get milk back a month later to be able to nurse the baby. All of the mothers in this room appreciate that.
Wow, that's a biggie.
Yeah, I guess I probably can't appreciate quite as much.
Yeah, we can.
But yeah, it was very special. It was hard for her to do that. So that was our first baby, and then the fact that it was so clearly the work of God for that to happen brought both my wife and I to Christ. We had both been brought up in the church. She was brought up in the Presbyterian, I was a Lutheran. And had you asked me before that time if I was a Christian, I would have said yes, and I could recite the Nicene Creed, and that was my proof. But I then realized I didn't know what this whole born again thing was. And that experience brought both my wife and I to the place where a pastor friend that we had led us to Christ as a result of that. So 1980 is my birthday, December 1980. So we call Tori, my oldest daughter, our missionary. And I would appreciate prayer for her, because she's not walking with the Lord right now. And that is, I know that's a big prayer request, so. Am I done? Okay, why don't you go ahead?
My story is that I was married for 31 years. And so since Matt is wanting couples that have been married longer, we beat everybody, because he was married 40, I was married 31, we've been married 10, 80 years.
Oh, jeez.
You guys win.
We win. Don and I both had dysfunctional childhoods. I wish that we could learn how to minister to the wounded child in each of us, but we were never able to do that, and we lived with the consequences. He was in seminary at the time, and I was a fairly new Christian. I wanted to be a submissive wife because I knew that wives were supposed to be submissive. And the Living Bible says, instead of submit, it says, fit into your husband's plans. And so I did everything I could to fit into his plans and really didn't have much of an opportunity to be heard or validated at all because I was trying so hard to please him and fit into his plans. Over the years, I really felt like I lost my voice and didn't know how to be able to speak into our marriage at all. I was afraid to talk to men or be in front of men, which is kind of fun now. Kevin's helped me change in that. Later, Don dropped out of seminary and became a fireman, and that has its own issues of 24-hour shifts. Anybody who knows about that knows there's lots of issues there. We went to multiple seminars, years and years and thousands of dollars of counseling, but we never were able to get it together. And but one thing, in order to benefit from counseling, you have to be honest and not just put on a good-looking face. And that didn't really happen so much. I tried to respect his position as the spiritual leader of our family, but it was hard for me to respect some of his attitudes and behavior. After years of spiritual abuse, I lost love and respect. I finally learned that he was misusing funds and had amassed thousands and thousands of dollars of debt. And I was counseled to file for legal separation that he turned into a divorce, and then he was married 6 months later. I leaned heavily on our pastor at the time, and Kevin was one of the main elders at the church at the time, and I sought counseling from the elders and from the pastor and to try to figure out how to walk through this the very best way that I could. We had 2 sons, Chris that has 3 children back in DC, and Chad who lives up in San Francisco, who is also not walking with the Lord. But we try to have open, good communications with them, and fortunately, they have both validated in front of groups that they have felt unconditional love from me, and so that's a very special thing.
In 2001, just before my wife's 50th birthday, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And that was another point where God was teaching both of us, and it was over a long period of time. She was basically normal for the first 2.5, maybe 3 years, and then we began to see Parkinson's, take effect, and she gradually, from about 2004 until she passed away in January 1st, 2012, she lost the ability to walk, the ability to talk, to feed herself. She was bedridden, and in 2010, I was, as a result of all the economy and all that was going on, I was laid off. And so I had to decide, do I find another job and hire a caregiver to take care of her, or do I just, manage our finances so that we can go as far as we can and I'll take care of her? And that's what I chose to do. So from January 2010 to January 1st, 2012, I was her full-time caregiver. That was hard. It was hard emotionally. It was hard physically because I was, needing to do things that I was not at all trained for. So we would have a home health nurse that would come in and show me how to do a Foley catheter or a feeding tube or, whatever the next thing was. And there was a point where I was angry. I was angry that this was happening to my wife. It wasn't supposed to. It wasn't part of the plan. And I realized I did make a vow about sickness and health. But when you make that vow, you never think it's gonna happen. We're gonna go on forever. And you don't really think about the end. We're gonna go on forever, and when the end comes, we're just gonna go both at the same time. But it rarely happens that way. So there was one evening where I was getting things ready for her, and I was in the closet pulling equipment out, and the Lord very clearly spoke to me, and He spoke to that part of me that was feeling burdened. And He said just basically one sentence, and it was very clear. He said, I created Carrie in my image, and you have the privilege of caring for her. And once I heard the word privilege, once I understood that this is God, and this is what He's doing, and I'm part of His plan, it didn't make what I had to do any easier. It didn't take that part of the burden away. But it did, I felt released from the weight of it, because I was caring for, someone created in God's image, and so she was, as I say, she was gradually declining, I guess is the right word. And on January 1st, 2012, I came home and she had passed. And we called paramedics, and there was nothing that they could do. And one of the support systems, two support systems that we had was through the church. We were part of a small group, and wonderful people, and Mary was part of that small group. And we let it be known that Carrie had passed, and they began to show up at my house. And they came upstairs where Carrie was. She was laying on the floor, and they came and they sat around her, and they began to pray for her. And pray for me and pray for the family. But it was just an amazing experience, and then they began to sing praise songs. And it was just a remarkable homegoing for my wife, and it was just a remarkable testimony to me, and it's hard for me to say this without tears, of the strength that you get from the family of God. When there are situations, life and death type situations, the family of God is an incredible, can be used in an incredible way by God. So, and Mary was there. For now.
Carrie's memorial service was the most beautiful one I've ever been to. And one of the things that was such a testimony was Kevin had made a vow, and he kept it. And it was hard for him, but he did it. And many people, the church was full, 300 people, and many people talked about Kevin's faithfulness. Things about that I learned from my marriage. One thing is, God intended the wife to be a helpmeet, the word Izar, if I'm saying it right. But God wants a wife to be a helpmeet, to be able to stand equally with that man and speak into his life and to be a team. And we never were able to do that, much to my sadness. We went to lots of marriage seminars, and one was that you learn that opposites attract. And we definitely fit into that category. Learn, it was also talked about, learn to see your differences as points of completion rather than points of competition. And somehow we were never able to get past completing one another to the completing one another. That's one thing that God has been so gracious to me about with Kevin. Learned that a spiritual leader should lead the spirits of his family. That's another thing. Rather than just the one with the seminary degree, the one who can lead the spirits. So you need to know the different spirits of the wife, the kids, and to know how to lead that. That's another thing that Kevin has been a blessing to me. The biggest personal lesson I learned was to forgive. I knew I had to intentionally forgive. And when an episode would come into my mind of betrayal or deceit or whatever, I had to choose to forgive that. And it probably took me a year or two of purposefully saying, I am going to forgive. I'm going to forgive, for me to be able to be released from some of the angst in all of that. When I would feel the anger rising up, I would purpose that. And there's a Corrie ten Boom phrase, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you. And a marriage is made up of two forgivers. And I see that all the time with us. Little things, but the irritating little things that you have to forgive and just let it go. You have to talk about the important things, but let the little things go. I knew that if I didn't forgive, it was going to eat away at me like a cancer. And so I knew that I needed to do that. A funny thing happened after this period of time. It probably took a year or two for that process to happen. But as I chose to forgive repeatedly, the Lord revealed to me my part in the difficulties. It was very easy to be able to say, he was terrible. Oh, that was bad. But the Lord revealed to me how I had failed and not been as the wife that I should have been. And even gave me compassion for him and some of the things that he had gone through. And so that was the big blessing that the Lord taught me. So our story. Kevin taught my older son, Chris, band in junior high school. And the first conversation that I ever remember having with him back in 1987 or whatever it was, I called Mr. Lathrop and I said, Chris is getting braces, what would be the best instrument for him? And he said...
No, you asked me.
I said, what would be, trumpet or trombone?
Piano.
It's your turn now.
So, I've known Mary since that time, since 1987. As a member of a family in church. We would see him on Sundays, and that was pretty much it.
The perfect family.
The perfect family, correct. And, so, I'm looking at my family with our problems, and wish that we could be like the Upham family.
Yeah,
Mhm.
everybody felt that.
Mhm.
When my wife passed, I would go to church and I would sit with friends. And we had another couple, my first wife, Carrie, and I had another couple, Glenn and Jana, who were very dear to us. And we did a lot of things together, and it was one of those unusual combinations where all of the connections work. So the guys are friends and the girls are friends and the cross friendships worked, and so it was just a great support for me, for both Carrie and me as she was becoming more ill. So in 2012, I would go to church and sit in church with them and with Mary, because she was also part of that group. Our friend Jana made sure that when I sat with them, I sat next to Glenn and not next to Mary, because she didn't want, there to be any relationship developing. Well, that worked for about 10 months. At the end of 2012, Mary was remodeling her kitchen, and I worked for a kitchen manufacturer, and so we ended up doing her kitchen, and I came by every once in a while to check on the work, and she called me one day because she was the kitchen was done, she was gonna make dinner, and she wanted to celebrate with me. So, okay.
But it was that day that my 14-year-old little schnauzer died. She was old and she was on the bed upstairs, and I went upstairs to carry her downstairs to go potty outside. But she was dead on the bed. So I texted Kevin and I said, could you come? Shotzi died. And so
I walked in, and the Mary that as a friend I knew, it was always very composed, very in control, very organized, and here was this, what I call Little Mary, sitting there holding this dead dog and crying. And it just touched something in me that from that moment on I knew that our relationship had turned a corner, because I wanted to take care of her. I wanted to, comfort her. And so I sat down next to her, and that was January 4th, I believe, 2013. And so from that point on, our relationship began to develop. And so for the next year, we made it clear that we were both going to be an open book to the other. That we wanted to make sure that if there was anything at all that they wanted to know, the other person wanted to know, they could ask, and we would tell them, whatever the answer was. We learned that communication was a extremely important issue, and a hard issue. I mean, and we were trying to be as open as we could, but we still felt like there are times when communication that just doesn't happen, even though you're doing your best. And so we have a little illustration here that we want to.
I get a lot of illustrations from Facebook, and I don't know if any of you saw this yesterday or the day before, but
Okay.
the illustration was, we have a picture of a brick and a sponge. So here we are, pouring water.
And the point is,
They were pouring, okay, you tell.
the point is listening to respond versus listening to understand. Okay? So here is the first one, this is on the brick.
Listening to respond.
And the water just falls right off the brick because.
Because the brick is thinking, okay, what am I gonna say next?
Yeah.
Not carrying any of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The second one
That
is a
goes-
sponge. It's sort of soaking
It's a
in. You get the idea.
it's a new listener, new listener.
So that is listening to understand.
Mm.
And that's what we wanted to do from the very start, was to be able to listen to understand the other person. So,
And we could tell you that this has for the last 10 years been perfect and it's always worked, but it hasn't. And God gave us an example this week where,
where I was a prick.
Because the devil knows you're presenting a disciple, that's why.
And that's what we thought. We thought, Satan does not want us to be here
Oh, of
doing
course.
this, and he would do whatever he could.
So do elaborate though on that.
Yeah.
How were you?
My memory just kind of goes. It had to do with driving. I don't know if anybody else here has that issue. We have different driving styles. And so that got all blown up out of proportion. But we solved it. I apologize. So, okay, go ahead.
You needed a front seat driver, huh?
what,
Did he need a front seat driver?
No,
Oh, okay.
anyway, I was wanting to connect with him. And he wasn't at a point where he really wanted to connect and hear what I was trying to say. And of course, we were listening to Grady and Karen, of course, and we were thinking, well,
they're perfect.
If we can only be like that.
But anyway, so it took a while, but one of the key points is that you have to connect first before you can communicate.
Mm.
And we were able, Kevin opened up the conversation the next morning, said, do you want to talk? Yeah, I want to talk. So we were able to deal with it. But you have to have some form of a connection and that desire to listen before you can really communicate. For our marriage, our wedding, we read a commitment to intimacy. And we wanted to give you all a copy of it.
In the actual wedding service, we made this part of the wedding service. And gave everyone their opinion. We watched our wedding video on our anniversary each time, and every once in a while, we'll take this out and just read it again. So, if you'll just read along with us. I will love you unconditionally. Oh. I will not reject you.
I will keep my heart vulnerable to you. I will not blame you for how I feel. That's a big one.
I will make it safe for you to be honest. I will not use anything you say against you.
I will reveal my disappointments and inner fears. I will not interrupt when you share your feelings.
I will include you in my hopes and desires. I will not manipulate or control you.
I will consider things from your point of view. I will not be defensive.
I will be accountable to you. I will not force you to meet my expectations.
I will reach out to you with affection. I will not withdraw from you emotionally or physically. That's the one I remember the most.
I will encourage your spiritual growth. I will not engage in fault finding.
I will view conflict as an opportunity for growth. I will not reject you as God uses you in my life.
Beautiful.
So that comes to mind at different times during the year. You know, just that's really part of our vows. Is to follow that.
As I mentioned earlier, the spiritual leader, as I learned, is one who leads the spirit of his family. And God really has used Kevin in my life in that. One of the things that he says, if I get concerned about something that's going to happen, he says, God's already there. And that helps me because it takes the pressure off of me. Kevin said that he wanted to provide a safe place. And our first year, there were multiple times that I would say, are you mad at me? Because I was so used to having that kind of response. He'd say no. But it's still hard, even for both of us, to feel comfortable bringing up some issues. Kevin's humor is very valuable, and it's helpful to diffuse tension. He can make me laugh, which is really good, but sometimes it avoids the issue. So we're trying to work at that a little bit more too.
Another thing that we've learned, we have some friends, an older missionary couple that they live by the saying that they draw on each other's strengths and cover each other's weaknesses. And I thought that is just a great picture of a good marriage, is that we all have strengths and weaknesses. And your spouse knows better than anybody else what those strengths and weaknesses are. And for you to have the attitude of, I'm going to cover your weaknesses, and I'm going to draw on your strengths. Mary's strength, she is a wonderful bookkeeper. She pays bills and she, handles finances very well. It's really a gift that she has. So when we moved up here and we bought our house, I built her an office. And I call it, if you've ever been in our house, I call it the bridge because it's kind of in the center of the house, and it's the control room. So that is one of her strengths. I can open pickle jars, so there's one of my strengths.
He's also the IT guy, the mechanic, lots of things, but that's good. One huge difference in us is I'm a do-it-now kind of person. Nike, I think, is my motto. And Kevin is, why do it today if it can wait until tomorrow? God must put one of those in every but we've learned to really compromise or learn from that. So I'm not as pushy to we have to get this done right now. Kevin doesn't always agree with that, with me on that I do that, but I try. And he's better about getting things done. We value and respect each other. That's fine to say.
Yeah.
And there's simple courtesies. This is another thing that has been really refreshing for me, is saying please and thank you. Thank you for taking the trash out. Thank you for making dinner. Thank you, please do this. Again, it's such a simple thing, but it means a lot.
first moved here, shortly after we moved, there was a small group being offered by Denise and Jeff Bradford on marriage. It was a marriage group, and it was called Marriage Oneness. If you've ever taken that, I think you'll understand just how valuable it is. It's a something like that, 6 or 7 video series, each video touching on a different area of the marriage, and it was just a great experience for us. It was, and it was very timely because it identified, for us in our situation, I had grown children. Mary has grown children. Mine are girls. Hers are boys. My girls had a tough time getting used to the fact that I was going to remarry.
Because Carrie had just passed away 2 years ago
Yeah.
before. And I had been divorced and single and happy for 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. So that was one of the areas, and thankfully that has, over the years, that has, just because of who Mary is, that has solved itself. My daughters have a pretty good, especially my younger daughter has a great relationship with Mary. And the other one is finances, figuring out, the finances, how are we gonna make this whole thing work? Bringing 2 houses together and working all the details out. And that has pretty much solved itself too. Lee, go ahead.
We have a recliner. It was actually a recliner that our small group bought for Carrie when she was so sick. And it's a very comfortable recliner. And Kevin gets up before I do, and he goes out to the recliner, and he does his reading and his Sudoku and all that stuff. And I go out and join him when I wake up in the morning, and we cuddle. And it has been a very valuable time. We call it laugh time. And we pray together, and Kevin ministers to that little girl and me, and it helps him feel like he's taking care of me and protecting me. And so that's been a very special thing for us. That's it.
I feel like we could talk another 2 hours.
How often do you do that? Was that daily? Was that a daily?
Every morning.
Pretty much every morning.
Right, so kind of a routine.
I let her sleep a while longer, and when she's ready, she comes out. And we've got the drapes open, we can see that we have this beautiful view. So yeah, it's just a great way to start the day.
Can I, hold on really quick? Hi, babies. Maybe we can push this date later if that's okay with everyone. I was just wondering, babies, would you mind everybody, let's see, what do I have? I have a bag of toys somewhere. Could all babies try and play quietly while mommies and daddies ask a few questions, okay? I just want a time for Q&A, at least. And maybe a part 2 of this, huh? So if anyone has some questions, and you guys just try and be loud for us,
Sure.
while the babies run around a little bit chaotically here. Sorry about that.
I have to say something that both Kevin and I really appreciate Natalie. This was her vision, and she has brought this together, and she comes and sets up chairs and tables and food and snacks and vacuums. Yeah. So, but thank you, Natalie, for this opportunity.
And I'll say at that, Natalie, I always felt, well, only once I hit my 50s, before you hit your 50s, you think, why am I going through this? Why is God punishing me? What have I done? Just when you love God, right? And then when you get old enough, you're like, wow, we all go through it. It's kind of like you're going to go through it one way or another. It might be wrapped a little different. And hearing people like you and hearing these people, you're going to push a little some trauma and some scars in the past, but at least you feel like, hey, at least we're not alone. Hey, he's just like me. I did that too, right?
Seriously,
And
right?
so, if you didn't take the time to do this, we've been saying at churches, why aren't there mentorships? Why aren't our elders sharing these things? I don't know how many times that we went there with our kids. Like, no one shares any of this stuff with us. It's like a secret. Like, they're gonna find out soon, but I ain't saying anything. It's really funny.
Well, didn't what Mary said, like that resonated a lot because, oh, we had the perfect marriage. Everybody thought so. How many times have you heard that?
Yes.
You have no idea what's going on. I
And it
would have
makes it
never
hurt
guessed
more.
that you guys had a rough 25 years. I mean, seriously, right? With the way that you guys act towards each other now. So I think it's really telling, and we're like, okay, everybody, there's maybe certain couples who were just made for each other and like the same personality, but that's not the majority of
They're
marriages.
filled with Christ.
It's really a tough thing, and I think we were warned before marriage, but you're dating and it's blissful, and then you get into it. There's nothing it's good to prepare, right? But there's really nothing you can do until you're in it, right? And then you're like, I made this commitment. That's why the commitment is so important, because you're just in it and you have to roll with it, and learn and try and adapt.
How would you
so.
say your second round? Because I always thought, like, if we didn't make it, I'm like, if we didn't make it, if I ever do it again, I think I'll do better. Because you learn through all your mistakes, right? Just like raising your first kid, you make mistakes. So on your second marriage, you had that profoundness. You could come in with knowledge and wisdom. Is it really that big of a difference when you're coming in as adults with knowledge and knowing
Right?
versus the
It
kids?
was a big difference for us. It really did.
Well, and you knew each other for how many years did you know each other just in church?
30.
So you guys,
We were acquaintances, and then that last 10 years after I went through the divorce, we became the group of, and that was so healing for me. But one thing about Lake Braidwood Church is that Dan and Cindy have really made it okay to not be perfect and to have authentic relationships. Our other church, you looked good. You came to church with your bow tie and your tie and you're all dressed up. And maybe your closest friends knew there was a problem, but it was not an atmosphere of authenticity. And I really appreciate that about Lake Braidwood.
I had sorry, was someone asking? I had some questions written down. You mentioned that God revealed to you. Some things that you weren't perfect on in your first marriage. I don't want to poke anything sort, but could you elaborate on like what he was revealing to you?
Probably a big one was we were very different, and he wanted the next big thing, the next big thing. And I was saying, no, we can't afford that, no, why do you want a radio alarm saw? And I wasn't questioning him, I didn't know what a radio alarm saw was. But if he said, oh, well, it can do this and this and this, then, oh, okay, that's a good idea. But I was more apt to say no. And so he didn't like that, and he would go around, and hence the multiple, huge gap. That's one thing.
And then you're so good with finances. Was that a frustrating thing? Because if you would have managed it, that could have probably solved a lot of.
And
he probably wouldn't have left
He
you.
managed the finances, and I had no idea really what was going on. So,
But that was your talent, and so
now that's different.
yeah.
So there were lots of things. If we had more time, I could think of more things.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to resolve conflict well, and that's a big thing. To learn how to resolve conflict.
I have a question for you. Was it loving having a wife and having a wife and having like Christ involved with that and having that strong love, that comfort level you have? How long did it take you to, even though Mary is a different thing, and so obviously you have mad love for her, but how was it? Did it take a difference? It was like a different dance partner, or a different energy exchange, or was there similarities, or was it a brand new thing?
Carrie and Mary have very different personalities. So if you use the idea of a dance, it was a whole different dance step with her. So that year, a little over a year, where we were in a relationship, it was important to sort of learn the step, if we use the same analogy. And so there were many times when we would just sit down and just talk for hours and ask each other questions. You know, what was this like, and what did you do here, and why did you do that? And, it was very important, and that really was the basis for that we built our relationship on. And
I would add too, that from my perspective, because Carrie was my child, we could talk about that. I can talk about Carrie to his kids. And so it wasn't a hush-hush topic. And so.
What do you think Carrie's saying right now? Carrie's stoked, and she's like, yeah, I'm glad. You get what I'm saying? Like your friend, Carrie, do you think Carrie's saying, I'm stoked you guys are together?
Yeah, and Carrie gave Helen permission 5 months before she passed away.
Wow.
That I want you to be happy, I want you to marry. She told that to our good friend Jana, she told that to his daughter Megan, and she even implied it to me when we were praying. But not thinking about us,
Right.
but just for Kevin's sake. Kevin, it's good for Kevin to have a wife.
Yes. I agree.
I
No.
totally agree on the same thing, but my contingency is that my ashes go above the bed. So, I say dumb stuff. I really told him that. I was wondering, how do you deal with Kevin's not laziness but inaction when you want something done? Because that resonated with me. We're having a bed fight at my house because we went away for our first overnight, and he rearranged the furniture because his mom was going to be watching them for the first time, and he was scared they were going to get hurt on this and this, and he's rearranging our furniture, and we're like late to a wedding, and I'm like freaking out. And so anyway, he's like scared they're going to trip on air, but he's got this box that's like 8 feet tall, leaned up against the wall in our room, and I'm trying to not take over because that's what I tend to do when something's not getting done, but I really am trying to like get us in different roles, because if I build that bed, I'm gonna resent him, and so I'm trying to stay out of it, but at the same time he's had 10 days off, and to the point where this thing is like past the point of being able to return it, so if it sucks, we're a little screwed. Anyway, so I had to stop myself because I'm going, how many more days off do you need? Like, I was just getting really disrespectful with it out of my frustration, and I think I apologized and tried to pull it back there and go, can you give me a day that you can commit to this being done? So I'm sure you can maybe relate to that or something. How have you handled that? Because you're such a good planner or so organized. It's hard to be married to someone and I'm not organized and I'm not a planner, and it still drives me nuts. Anyway.
I should stop recording.
Stop reading. Erase that part. Abraham,
I
erase
don't
that.
have an answer for that.
Be loud, Kevin.
no, I think the fact that, we love each other, we have a good relationship. If it's something that is, where I understand the support, this thing has to be done by this time, I'll get it done. it just may not be exactly the timeline that she was planning on. And she has adjusted her expectations so that she, as long as whatever it is getting done by the time that it needs to get done, I will do it on my own timeline, what I like to call the fullness of time.
I told them if you use that phrase, I would use it. It sounds spiritual, doesn't it? The fullness of time. Good word for procrastination, but no, we've learned to adjust to each other in that. And we also ask, is this important to you? How important is this to you? And if something's important to him, then I'll lean toward that, or whatever.
Does anyone else have any questions you'd like to ask them? Any other questions? Good? All right, you guys. Can we give a very big clap for Mary? And Mary, I just want to say, these are actually for you. Take home. This is a thank you. So I don't know if you guys know this, but this has been in my head for a while. And when I first started actually going for it, I was being completely ignored, just ghosted. I was having trouble getting this together. And I'm like, you know what? Mary. She was like, how can I support you? I'm like, well, and she, like, people that hadn't responded to me in like 2 weeks, within 5 minutes of Mary reaching out, texted me right away. So this is the most like effective woman in our whole church. And it's really easy to just look at you and just think you have everything together. And so we just really appreciate you opening up and being real. And you are just an amazing woman. So thank you so much for getting this ball rolling. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Help yourself. We're not bringing anything home. The lemonade does not have sugar in it. Well, it does, but not like refined sugar. Still healthier. Thank you all for being here. Next one is, I don't know. Oh, not the bombing? The bombing. Well, we'll let you all know. Is anybody okay with us extending the time a little bit?
Probably need to.
I think we do because I felt like you all needed an extra 2 hours. I mean, we can't do it that much.
That was a problem.
I kind of kept it a little on the earlier side because just to respect early bedtimes and stuff, but like it's Friday. I don't think it's a big concern. Anyway, if you all are down for an extra like 20, 30 minutes, I think that'd be really helpful. And we'll see you all next time. I'll text you. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.